So the first reason is that it makes all weapons useful, except for shotguns, but that's for another video. Okay, I got here an MP5K, and believe it or not, that weapon is actually not only useful, I think it's one of the most useful weapons in the game, and I think most players haven't noticed how useful it is. Okay, so before that new recoil change, here's how the game would work. If you would use a Glock and just go semi-auto, that would be more accurate and a faster way to put more rounds on the target than any submachine gun. Because if you use a submachine gun on full auto, the first shot would hit, then the second to the 9th shot, depending on the fire rate of the weapon, would go up like that, and then it would go down again. Which means a good pistol shooter would land 5 or 6 shots on target before you get the recoil under control, which made submachine guns completely useless. How about check this out now? Okay, now let's try full auto 3-shot burst. Okay, and see here, those are really small groups of shots. I fired 3 shots at a much faster rate than a Glock would fire. Okay, I'm going to use the weapon in full auto. If you fire it unsupported, it's going to look like that. Now, if you try to control the recoil by pulling your mouse down, you'll get this. And the fun thing here is that the MP5K, it only costs, I think, 15,000 something ruble, and I rarely ever see it used by players. Because I think most players haven't noticed how useful this weapon is right now. And it brings me to the second point, is that submachine guns now have their correct use in the game, or the correct place in between assault rifles and pistols. Because now a submachine gun, even a cheap submachine gun without any mods and with real cheap ammo, can win a firefight against an extremely well-armored player with an assault rifle. Because combine it with a new weapon, with the armor system, let's say I'm coming around the corner and there's another player coming in. I can put 900 RPM of rounds at the target, and if you fire that many rounds at the target, something will find a gap in the body armor and get through. And even if the enemy has an assault rifle with the same rate of fire, he will have to manage much higher recoil than I have to do with this weapon. So in close combat situations, a submachine gun is now better than pistols, shotguns, and assault rifles. And the cool thing is also that it equalizes combat a bit more. So it's not about who has the better gear, it's also who has a better tactical position in combat. Okay, now the third point is area denial. Okay, now for this I got an AKSU. I don't have a full-size AK because my character hasn't unlocked level 15 yet. Let's try the same with an AKSU. See if we try 3 shots. I'm going to try 5 shots. See, now it gets a bit more difficult, but I'm still putting 2 rounds almost in the same spot with an AKSU at that distance. That means full auto fire is now extremely useful for assault rifles too, which makes area denial now possible. So let's say, for example, there's an enemy who wants to peek through that door, and you know you're on the other side. Let's say you're prone or crouched, and you wait for full auto. Now, before this patch, what would happen is they would peek in, you would fire the first shot, it would hit, and then you waste about a third of a magazine shooting above the target before you get recoil control down. If the enemy just peeks in with semi-auto, he can just basically destroy you before you get control of your weapon again. However, now if you got full auto, like the first 5 shots, and even especially if you're prone, most of your magazine is going to hit the target at that distance. which means now you can effectively control an area because the enemy cannot afford peeking into it. Because previously they could just out-tank you with better armor, out-tank most of your shots, or simply make you miss because you go full auto, and win the fight. Unless you, of course, you would switch to semi-auto. But then again, you're throwing away the advantages automatic weapons have in close range. And that problem is now fixed, which means if you're playing with your friends and you just have an automatic rifle somewhere, you can have your friend basically set his thing full auto, and even if the enemy knows you on the other side, he cannot simply out-peek you with better armor. And there's a further point to that is, let's say you use 45 round magazines, which I think most people don't use currently. Then you got 50% more rounds in your gun, which means if you have a fight for another player of a similar weapon, and you invest into that larger magazine capacity and the extra body armor to carry it, or the bigger armor rig to carry it. And point 4 is that now you can use completely unmodded weapons and, well, survive a firefight with them. You see, I'm using completely unmodded guns. And let's say there's a player over here. Let's take some distance. Oh, wasn't semi. Those are 3 center mass shots. So, and I have no mods on the weapon, which means you can actually use mods. You can use weapons without any mods, and you don't have to turn AKs into these weird plastic guns just to get the recoil down. No, it's more of a cosmetic thing you can do for a weapon if you want to. I think it adds to the game immersion. Let's say you want to use a full-size AK with wooden furniture, like an AK-74 or an AKM. Now it's possible without throwing away survivability for it. And the last point is that players will now use more ammo because full auto combat is now much more viable. Because before this patch, I used to play with an AKM a lot, and if I would win the fight by basically having to drop on the enemy, I would usually win the fight in 3 to 5 shots, which means weapon jamming, overheating was almost never a factor in the game. Now it is a factor, and I think it's a great thing. Now, some players don't like that, but I think it's an important thing for a realistic game to have weapon jamming and overheating. And also, ammo consumption is now, I think it makes much more interesting gameplay, because now players would rather use a lot of cheap ammo than just the best ammo, because that's all they can afford. And if more ammo is used, that means you're spending more money on ammo. And I think this also adds another money sink into the game. I think that's an important thing. So because if players top out too early on having too much money, then you just get bored of the game.